please welcome on stage Anila Vinayak, General Manager, CMI of Beauty and Wellbeing at Hindustan Unilever Limited, and currently holds the position of Secretary at MRSI. Anila brings extensive global experience from 2 decades at her stint in Unilever, managing various brands and categories. Her diverse roles in customer development, marketing, consumer insights, and analytics provide valuable insights into business operations. Driven by business impact, she believes in placing the consumer at the core of strategic decisions, ensuring inevitable results. She is passionate about qualitative and emotional insights, yet equally adept in analytics and reflecting her diverse research interests. So please welcome on stage Anila Vinayak.
Thank you, Chandra. And from the time you wrote the profile to the time you're on stage, another decade has passed, so 30 years. Really, really too long. Guys, welcome back. And if you're still grabbing coffee, encourage you to come back because you don't want to miss the next session. And for the ones who've been with us through the journey of a day odd, you already know and are close to this topic. Your eyes and ears and brains have been perked by the concept of using technology to build brands already. So it is not a new concept anymore. I must say the industry over the last 2 years has already pointed us to the tremendous potential that technology will actually bring to building brands. Whether it is content creation, market research, qualitative, quantitative, whether it is adding consumer value to each step of the consumer journey itself, or creating personalized brand experiences that create brand identity. Actually, no one is any more second-guessing the role that technology can play. I think what we are limited by, if at all, is our imagination and our agility in the momentum with which we are embracing technology going forward. So it is a very, very exciting topic. I'm personally very enthused to hear all the stalwarts who will be talking to us on this panel discussion. So very exciting for me to introduce and call on stage, first of all, the moderator, my very good friend, Shuvadip Banerjee, Chief Digital and Marketing Officer at ITC Limited. Shuvadip has played a pivotal role. He's given us quite a lot of sleepless nights at HUL by launching iconic challenger brands like Bingo, Yippee, Sunfeast Dark Fantasy, Sunfeast Mom's Magic, Be Natural. The list is endless. He's created a robust and integrated insights practice for the foods and beverages business at ITC. He was also instrumental in conceptualizing and implementing their growth engine, The Sixth Sense. So welcome, Shuvadip, and he will be the Sutradhar for this session. Please could you also join me in welcoming Karthik Nagarajan. He's the CEO at Hogarth India with a remarkable career spanning roles like Chief Content Officer at Wavemaker, National Head of Content at Group M, Country Head at NM Insight. Karthik brings unparalleled expertise to the table. From leadership in content creation to his influence in global analytics, his insights are invaluable. Can we also have on stage Siddhant Mazumdar, Head of Mediabrands Content Studio in India. Welcome. In his current role, he drives creative thinking across agency networks, media relationships, and looks after everything related to content and creative tech. When not pitching immersive content to IPG clients, Siddhant loves tinkering with AI. He's already launched a lot of generative AI-powered campaigns for brands from ITC, Prime Video. His previous stints include being CEO for Digital Street, Head of Sales at Vice Media, and NCD at Interactive Avenues. Next, I welcome on stage Saugato Bhowmik, Group Director, CPG, Auto, and D2C at Meta. With a dynamic career spanning over 20 years, Saugato brings a wealth of expertise in sales, marketing, and leadership. He joined Meta in 2022, where he heads FMCG, automotive, and direct-to-consumer businesses for the Global Business Group, managing Meta's largest client and agency partnerships. Chandan Mukherji, absolutely no stranger to this forum. He's the Director and Executive Vice President, Strategy, Marketing and Communication at Nestle India. He has an extensive leadership role. I'm sure I will miss something, but let me try. He leads strategy, brand building, communication, digital insights, and innovation for Nestle. He brings a wealth of experience from his global role at Nestle and his previous work at Hindustan Unilever as well. And my friend and business partner, Nithya. Nithya heads the beauty incubator business at Hindustan Unilever. And because a lot of you will ask me what that means, we leave it for Nithya to tell you what she incubates in beauty for us. She has handled a lot of iconic brands for Hindustan Unilever like Dove, Tresemme, Pond's. She's worked in tough categories and has over a decade of business in building brands. So, Shuvadip, over to you.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all of you. It's really, a very, very rare occasion when you have such an eclectic group of people sitting on the same stage, all humongously stalwarts in their own ways. On behalf of MRSI, we really, really thank all of you for taking out time and being there with us. Ladies and gentlemen, can I request you to put your hands together for this August panelists here. We have a missing chair, and I hope the Bombay traffic will soon let him into this room and on the stage soon. That's Karthik. Anila was introducing him as the head of Hogarth. But while we will wait for him to join us, let's start. I'll start with Chandan. I think the question is not about whether tech is enabling us to build brands. But Chandan has actually seen almost everything and done everything that you can think of and dream of. But over the last, I think, 7-8 years, correct me if I'm wrong, 7-8 years, we have seen very, very rapid shift in consumer behavior, in their preferences. And parallelly, there has also been a very rapid progress in our access to tech, in our ability to merge both and build our brands. How have you seen this at Nestle? And how have you pivoted, adapted as a larger marketing team at Nestle to adopt all of these and build very, very strong brands that we are all aware of?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question, and pleasure to be here. Of course, technology is something which is all-encompassing and all a part of consumer lives, all a part of businesses, all a part of ways of working, ways of doing things, and so on. So therefore, there's tech everywhere. But let me just sort of, step back a little bit into the world of marketing and where does tech come in. We've all, at least I grew up in the era where we had 4 Ps and 5 Ps and 7 Ps of marketing, the product, price, and promotion and placement and so on. And now I think there are about 20 Ps of marketing. And that's the big shift, which has happened from just 4 or 5 or 7 Ps into 20 Ps. And tech is a part of this, but it's not just tech. I think it's a bigger picture. So there is purpose, brands wanting to create an impact, looking at purpose. There's problem. What problem do you want to solve and therefore respond to it? And therefore there are newer age players and players like us, legacy players, who've also looked at, purpose and the problem to solve. There are things like, very mundane things like, packaging and personality and all of that, which are also extending the Ps. There is the whole element of performance, and there's so much about technology and performance and everything else which is associated with it, and therefore that's a new P which has come in. There are Ps like, for example, passion and people. People, for example, who are you talking to and who is behind your brand or your product and so on. And if you look at, creators in the FMCG world who started big companies like, let's say, Nestle, Henri Nestle, or Unilever, my previous company, whether it is Marjorie and Uni or William Lever or the Lever brothers, I mean, they had a lot of, passion behind things, and that is how they started the great companies that they started, and therefore there is, passion and all of that coming in. So there are more dimensions of all of this. There are platforms, there are technology platforms, digital platforms for content creation, for content adaptation, for media, for touch points, for engagement, and all of that. And therefore there is so much of personalization, which is another P, and technology enables that in such a big way in many, many different areas. So the expansion has happened across, And when you look at brand building, marketing, in any which way, you have to now think of many more dimensions. And all these dimensions lead to different opportunities, and combination of these different dimensions, lead to different opportunities that you have. You have the world of partnerships, and today, digital influencers and so on are a big part of, what we do in marketing, whether it be some of our brands in India or some of our brands, even from a global perspective, of bringing in influencers and partners into the entire ecosystem and creating that in a very, very big way. So therefore, the whole world of people, of brands, of communication, of marketing, of technology have all got infused with many more variables, and there are many great examples, whether it be, digital first brands. We were among the first companies to have a brand called Nespresso worldwide, which is a digital first brand, started about 15, 20 years ago, which was only available digitally to, today brands of whatever sort of shape and form and across different platforms, which are enabling and which are being enabled by digital in many, many ways. So therefore, that's this transition, and that's the shift that we are seeing from a few Ps to many more Ps, and it's about imagination and trying to build all these Ps together that actually leads to business success and growth.
Wonderful. That was a great way to put the evolution and the expansion of the Ps. Let's move to another P to you, Saugato, which is the world of possibility. Meta has always been in the forefront of tech, right? And you guys have really helped us as marketeers to create content, to target the right set of people with the right set of content. And nowadays you've been propagating, this phrase saying that give it up. And we as marketeers, we are very, very finicky. We want to be control freaks, even the way the brand is shown and what the person is going to talk and how the benefit is going to look like and stuff like that. But you're saying, let AI do all of that, you guys just give it up. So why don't you throw some light around how media, creative, and tech are all coming together in the world of Meta? And if you can give us a sneak peek into what we should expect in the coming tomorrow.
So as always, I love it how Shuvadip puts me in the spot, and I have the absolute privilege and good fortune of working very closely with both Chandan, Shuvadip, with the HUL team. So I take that all with a lot of sense of privilege. So let me reframe Shuvadip's question. We do not say give it up. I, by the way, a little history context, I come from that exact generation of brand building marketers where I spent a pretty formative 10 years at Unilever myself in India, and some of the core brands of fabric cleaning, personal care is where I worked. So I know exactly the transition we are seeing, we are orchestrating. What do I mean by that? So I'm stepping back from Shuvadip's question again a little bit. The world of making a beautiful 30-second, 1-minute TVC, where we would obsess for 6 months on a great brief, insight-led brief, and then we would translate that brief into a great piece of communication, and then we would go about the whole process of the media planning and the measurement around it, right? That world, the principles remain the same. We still have to make the best, most effective creatives. We still have to find that right audience. We still have to measure the right outcomes. Those principles will never change. What has changed completely and profoundly is the audience behavior. That audience has shifted across the world, and more so in India, with India being the largest mobile country in the world. We all know the stats, so I won't repeat them. But global data shows average watch time and average attention span, whether it's above 25 years of age or below 25 years of age, to be ranging between 6 to 8 seconds. It does not matter what we as marketers make anymore. What matters is consumer behavior has shifted to short form. I do take, gladly, I will say, Meta has been at the forefront of that behavior shift. Just to give you another stat to support that, your audience has moved. As per TGI, in 2023, the time spent on reels alone in India was 3.5 times that of TV. I'm not talking all short form video. Now that has changed, so which means the storytelling has changed. The way of content consumption, native content consumption has changed. I'm sure you understand that very well as you look into the incubation of new brands in HUL. Now if that's changed, that means creative has changed. And if creative has changed, the way we used to measure earlier, and I'm talking to an entire audience where your leaders in the measurement space, that has also changed because AI is scrambling all previously laid out ways of working. The first way of working that AI has scrambled is, we used to grow up with this entire beautiful funnel called top, middle, bottom. It was linear. You expected people to be first aware, then you go middle, and then you go convert. Yeah? That has changed because the number of touch points has changed so much. Through creators, I can get to know through my own social graph, I can get to know about a product. I don't have to be exposed to brand communication. Somebody would have bought it already back end through Instagram. Maybe my wife does that all the time. And then I go and check it up and I get to know more about it later. I put it in my cart for the next purchase. And then I come back and buy much later. And the cycle back and forth continues with WhatsApp playing a bigger role inside it because WhatsApp is inside your flow. So where I'm going with all this is AI is not saying give it all up. We are not saying give it all up. We're just saying, can you now focus on what's material? Focus on the objective, focus on the creative. Which means what? Through our automated tools, so the AI is doing two things. It's allowing you to automate the entire process of where does your budget go. Today, if your campaign size is 1 crore and you want to hit a certain million audiences, the very classical way of media planning will be male, female, 18 to 25 for a certain brand, these geographies, go there. Let the budget go to the audience which is most likely to convert to your objective. If your objective is brand recall lift, let the machine find it. The machine is getting 3 billion signals every single day. No human intervention of targeting can supplant that. Give the machine enough creatives. We used to make one mega creative. Take AI tools, build a huge bank of creatives around your co-creative, around your theme. Finally, let the machine find the audience. Let the machine decide where to put the budget. That's what we are saying. So give the right fuel. The fuel is the right objective. If objective is optimization, let's say conversions, website conversions. The objective could be app installs. The objective could be ad recall lift. The objective could be awareness. The objective could be anybody. Decide the right objective and the right creatives. Give the machine enough creative width. The machine will do the rest. Let the machine learn. I know this is very difficult. I am one of those brand marketers you said control freak. I was. I at some stage continue to be. I totally understand the problem. And it requires a worldview shift. But this worldview shift is inevitable. So that's my take on it. Just to give you some stats on the performance of the automated campaigns. I mean, I work with a very, very fast-growing digital-first brand like, I don't know if you've heard of the brand called Snitch. It's a very fast-growing male fashion, fast fashion brand. And it's opened 200 stores as we speak, and it's going to get to 1,000 stores soon. They have expanded their automated campaigns 8x in the last 1 year, with ROAS more than doubling. So typically one expects when you scale campaigns, ROAS falls, the opposite's happening, because they're imbibing these principles. So I'm not asking you to give it up, I'm just asking you to give the system the right fuel, and then give it the freedom to find your audience, your outcome, your results. So yes, sorry that was a long-winded answer, but I was trying to explain the entire world of Meta in a 5-minute span.
That was a great masterclass in a very, very short speech from your side. No, just borrowing a few points, Siddhant, from what he's talking about, Saugato is talking about. He talked about 6 to 8 seconds is the attention span, and that's why he's saying, you know, build a creative, break it up, not give it up. Let the AI do it after that. Borrowing a point from there, if that's the attention span, yesterday we heard brilliant talk from somebody, from Neeraj, around creative tech. And you are no less a rock star in the same space. So how do you look at creative tech in our ability to really break the clutter? And more importantly, you know, how as marketeers will we come to know the new tech? And more importantly, beyond that is about what to do with that tech.
Thanks, Shuvadip, for that question. So I think I really agree with some of the points that have been raised by the co-panelists about there being so many different things that come into play every year, right? Like you said yourself, now we have 20 Ps, right? But I think for creative strategists and creative people in general, right, it's very important to simplify this, right? What do we care about? We care about what our audience cares about, right? So let's park the 20 Ps and the 5 Ps for a second, right? Like what we normally do is, you know, our point of view is look at what the brand space is, at the same time, look at what the consumer space is, and if there is an overlap, there is promise for us to build something of value there, right? Tech is a great tool in our shed, no doubt about it, right? Tech can help us understand, you know, is this the right space for the brand? Is that, or have I picked the right space for the consumer? Tech can also help us understand how do I serve this message in the best possible manner. But tech is not the message in itself. Tech is just another tool that we are, we love working with because yes, of course, it can do a lot of things for us. I think a good case in point, I think, for a lot of people who don't know, under Shuvadip's leadership, we actually did a great campaign for Dark Fantasy with Shah Rukh Khan in it, right? And over there, what we used is, we used AI to get people into the same frame as Shah Rukh, right? And that's something that I think people really loved, right? So what happened was, our tech was able to marry the brand message beautifully, right? Gaining inspiration from there, I think we did a couple of other examples as well with other brands like Prime Video, fairly successful. But there did come a brand who I will not mention right now, right? But they want to do the same tech. We kept telling them, like, it's not the best fit, right? Because unlike Shah Rukh, or unlike, let's say, the other example that we had from Mirzapur, people really cared about being a part of that visual. Here, people didn't necessarily care, but they were just so enamored by the fact that this technology exists. They made us do it, and did we get the numbers? No, we didn't, right? So at some points, I think it's important to not just get enamored by the shiny new object in, our industry at the moment, and keep being very true to the point that, there has to be an overlap. My audience has to care, and if they don't care, please be brave enough to park that tech and look for something else that would really matter. And also, I think to answer your second question, right, which is where do we get the ideas on, what to use and what not to use. I think it's fairly straightforward. I mean, the magic is already happening. There are people in the country, it may be a small 2-man team sitting in Bangalore, or it may be a 1,000-man agency sitting in Bombay, right? We do have to build our networks to understand who's out there, who's doing something interesting. And the more you connect with people, the more you'll find out. But I think, one point that I genuinely struggle with sometimes is that the over-dependence that we have as an industry have on being first, right? Like if someone has used this tech, they may have used it, already there are laughs in the room because, I know it's a pain point for all of us, right? Like the idea is not to be the first, right? I think it's more important to be the first one to get it absolutely right? And to keep weaving that magic, right? Like a side example one could give is, if you have a chef, right? And if a chef is making a great dish, does it matter to be the first one to make the dish? I don't think so, right? Because your end consumer doesn't know. He doesn't know whether some other brand has done it or no. He doesn't care at all. What he cares about is the experience that you've served to me. Did it really work for me? Right? And if that is true, then don't hesitate in seeing that, okay, you could pick up a tech from, let's say, the early 2000s and bring it back. Should one stop you? One shouldn't, right? So, if there are people out there who are willing to experiment, that's great, let's talk to them. But at the same time, let's not forget the older experiments because sometimes, tech will come in handy in a way that you don't predict it. It's all right if people have done it in the past, right? If you have a good execution, nothing like it.
Nithya, Chandan, do you want to add to this? Because we find it very difficult to really figure out, at ITC that which tool to pick up, what to really do with that. We have so little imagination at that point in time. Again, another workshop. again some brainstorming session, again some 20 lists, then the same prioritization, same goddamn shit again. Do you guys face the same issue? And then after it happens, you know, so and so has done it now, let me also try and copy. Do you face that same issue or you don't?
So see, I think the fact that FOMO exists is real. I don't want to deny that. But at the same time, I think it's important to step back and understand why you're doing what you're doing. While some of you guys talked about creative tech, I think there is a lot more to tech than just creative. There is also tech that tells you what spaces to launch in, for instance. There's tech that tells you, gives you an idea of immersive experiences for consumers. And I think depending on the stage of the brand that you're at, it's important to understand what you're trying to get with this tech. I'll give you an example. For instance, if there is technology that creates an immersive experience for the consumer that's helpful in retention, don't use it for acquisition, right? Then you're not going to get the same result. So I think while there is enough and more tech that's there in the market today, while each of us have used enough and more tech, I think it's important to establish what we're trying to get out of it and measure accordingly, because otherwise it's just, a lot of us will end up doing tech for the sake of tech, AI, tech, etc., all of those buzzwords, and not understand what it's driving for business, because at the end of the day, the objective remains the same. So I think I'll just add that.
Can I add a second to it? So just to support what Nithya said, it depends on the consumer outcome that you're seeking. So for example, with Maggi, a couple of years ago, one of the briefs was how do you build a consumption occasion for Maggi when it's raining season. So we used a weather API. When it starts raining, it triggers the ad in that exact location with AI generating the background of rain. And you know, a steaming bowl of Maggi against a background of rain is a classic. But to ensure it meets the occasion, exactly when you're experiencing rain wherever you're sitting, is the magic of bringing the creative and the tech together. But it has to be, like she said, backwards from the job to be done. What job are you looking for? Are you looking? This was about building an occasion. This was not reach. This is not awareness. This is not you know, acquisition. This was a consumption occasion, so you were trying to build more usage. So, I mean, you can find all these kind of examples. I mean, I can keep going on and on, but I'll end up taking...
I think these forums, you know, unravel so many things. So now I realized why we did so poorly that monsoon with respect to EP. Yeah, Chandan, you wanted to say something.
No, I think, you know, while there are many glitzy things everywhere and there's so many variables at play and, you know, whatever, I think we need to recognize that fundamentals are fundamental still.
Yeah.
I think that base has to be still very, very clear. And then on top of that, of course, tech is a big enabler, big tool, can get productivity, efficiency, scale, you know, whether it's content, media, engagement, whatever. But unless you're very clear on what you want to do, what your brand stands for, what are you trying to drive, and so on, you will get it all wrong. And if the FOMO is directed towards just the glitzy part without your fundamentals, then it has little meaning. If you've got your fundamentals right and you want to be in the FOMO game of trying to do new things and being seen as cool and so on, as a brand and so on and so forth, then it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you very much. Karthik, thanks for joining in. Sorry on behalf of the bad traffic in Bombay. We've heard a lot of them speak about tech and how it's being used in order to communicate with consumers and how do we target them well and so on and so forth. You have been on the cutting edge of, Hogarth has been in the cutting edge of the new age storytelling. There is also this belief, you know, that there's hyper dependency on data, and it's kind of stripping away the emotional quotient. And when you have to create content in 5-6 seconds, and you know the passion with which Saugato spoke about how he used to create his content way back, and now how he's forcing us to create content and deliver the same emotion. So how do you, and what do you suggest when it comes to balancing of creativity, tech, and data in the new age storytelling?
Before I do that, can I do an unsolicited digression?
Sure.
I know Shuvadip passionately spoke about the attention span, and we all, you know, followed it up. But I think this generation needlessly gets beaten up on attention span because I'll give you an example. Emily in Paris. An episode is roughly about 22 minutes. Most of my team is 20-something. They can binge watch an entire season in one sitting. It's about 210 minutes. See, the generation doesn't have an attention span problem. I think we have an engagement problem because of what we create. And by the way, there are more books being sold than even during the pandemic, before pandemic years, as we speak, right? So, end of digression. Coming back to this, I think, my apologies for showing up late, but there was a big life lesson which is related to the question itself, right? I feel you asked about data and tech, right? And I think...
and creativity.
And creativity.
And emotion.
Yes. And life. And so I think if this engagement and if this creativity is the destination, right? For me, that was Land's End just an hour back. I think data and tech solve two different purposes. And you put it across, very well. I think tech is not really as consequential to this. Tech is to me like the car that I came in. I came in a Maruti Desire. I could have come in a Mercedes Benz. I would have still been 10 minutes late. Right? So it doesn't change that. But data, on the other hand, to me is more the Google Maps that I show up on this journey with, right? And it helps you sort of navigate better. And I think we are in a better place than we were 5 years back, 10 years back on that. So to me, I think creators who think of data as an ally, right? And I'm not saying this because you're on stage, someone like you, someone like Chandan. I've seen all of you sort of do that time and again. That is where the magic happens. I think if you look at data as a constraint, as a creator, something that stops you from what you're naturally doing, then I think you will have issues. But the creators who sort of use it as an ally, use it as a jetpack, sort of I feel are able to actually connect better than they did earlier.
Great. Would you like to cite an example or two from your recent experience around this, non-ITC?
No, there are multiple. And I'll probably talk about what we did with Coke, earlier on. There are, I think, enough Shah Rukh Khan and AI examples across brands, so I'm not going to go into that. But I think, and I find this example very fascinating, right? I think earlier last year, Coke opened up its brand to multiple interpretations by the audience, right? Using Gen AI. This is the real magic, create real magic sort of a campaign, right? I find that very, very interesting because if you look at a brand like Coke, and if you go back to some of the greatest commercials we've seen, including the mountaintop commercials and all of that, it's probably the most guarded, brand, which probably only did a few pieces of communication in a year, but it was all very, very controlled. We didn't have access to it as a fan, as people. But I think what tech did was ensure that a brand like Coke opened up its gates to people. Suddenly you could create an astronaut sipping Coke while floating in space, commercial, and that image could actually be featured in the New York skyline. And to me, that democratization of that, but without the brand sort of losing, its safety net, to me, I think it's the ultimate example of how tech can create engagement, can create the brand love, right?
I just want to digress a little bit here. So I think when we talk about tech, we talk about the view that that's usually there is a fancy, jazzy way of doing what you're doing. I think the first thing that we need to do, though, is just to take a step back and just figure how to use tech to enable what we're already doing today more efficiently, right? For instance, a lot of us make decisions on what sort of spaces we need to get into, what sort of brands we need to launch. Can tech enable that better? Can tech enable us to build more efficiently and create smaller batches, for instance? Can tech enable us to personalize communication where we're already seeing joy of personalized communication? So I think before going into something that's 5 steps ahead, I think doing what we're currently doing better and using tech to do that is also very important. And I think that's not spoken about enough when
Spot
we talk
on.
about tech.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can I add on to that even
Sure,
more
sure,
so?
sure, bilkul.
Actually, vehemently agree. And I will go even more basic and core on that. I don't think 9 out of 10 brands in India are using core tech to even do their core reach properly. Let's be clear. There was a time, again, I hark back to when I was the brand manager, when we used to call it non-traditional media. Then it became digital. As we sit today, platforms like Instagram are 650 million MAU with 90% ratios of DAU. They are larger than TV in most parts of the country. Facebook is 515 million. Google is also a very large platform. These are core and mainstream reach platforms, and I still think there is a long way to build even core reach and core salience and core affinity. Basics of what we were taught as brand building on platforms such as this. And this is not about tech using something for jazziness or some layer on top. We call it foundations. Build your core reach through the right creatives, right mobile first environment, and you automatically will start to use it for what it's mainly needed for. Then you can build the foundations with creators, poll ads, live ads, AR, jazz, APIs, creative into tech. Lots of that will come on top, but master it for what it is really needed for, which is reach.
Can't agree more, because I think we at ITC still guilty of some of our campaigns which are sometimes below threshold. Sometimes it's not really, the content is not really crafted for the cohort, and so on and so forth. So brilliant basics are still sometimes faulty, and we are to be blamed for that. And Nithya, I can't agree more with you on having the fundamentals first. Before Nithya, I come to you with a question specific to your space. I had a question for all of us here, saying that, there's a stat which tells that around 38%, and because we are in a market research forum, 38.7%, stating that, we are there to block ads in some form. So we use a browser which protects me from there. I go behind paywall sometimes. I change my privacy settings otherwise. And we are struggling as marketeers, because we spoke a lot about advertisement as the route to build brands. How do we see other routes just beyond the advertising route to build brands? Owned assets, other exchange platforms, and there's a new good term called value exchange that has come up in a big way. How do we look at beyond ads, building brands, building brand love?
Well, there are many ways to, kind of build brand love and build brands. I think more fundamentally, it's a combination of human understanding and technology which will get us there. Human understanding essentially to kind of, get those meaningful and relevant messages out, because that's the reason why people are blocking ads. I mean, they're getting so much of content, so much of stuff. It's meaningless, it's a waste of time, it's not about them. Why do I consume any of that? What a waste would it be?
Huge decay. Huge decay and ads now.
Huge decay and, irrelevant stuff. So technology has to help there and even go further to basically get personalization, to get the right kind of communication served to the right audience. And there are so many ways to skin the cat out there with so much of technology that we are talking about to see what exactly would work there. And if there is more meaningfulness and more personalization in that sense and more relevance, which is at the core of, marketing, brand building, and so on, if we get that right, I think we'll be seeing an improvement in the ad blockers and so on. Of course, there's also the digital fraud and various other elements at play also there, which takes us into a different domain, but we're not talking about that here. But I think that's at the core of it. So therefore, human understanding is very, very key, so that you understand how do you, to the point that he was making about what's the compelling message you want to talk about, what really motivates the consumer. How do you put it forth in a short piece of communication or in a long form format, would have different roles at different stages of the consumer journey, which is often referred to as the process P in the different Ps that we talk about. So therefore, there are different opportunities out there. Also, in the world of tech, it's also important to understand what questions do we ask. Like the use of AI, AI will not come up, like we are very close to Bandra Land's End. If I were to have a party on the ocean out here or on the sea out here, I have to ask that question. AI will give me an answer. Throw me a party on the sea out here and let's see, and how do I prompt and ask more questions about it? AI, I'm sure, will give me a lot of different opportunities, and then I can apply my human mind again to filter the right one, and I could organize a party out there. And that's what technology can do. But what the human mind can do is all of this questioning and how do we really get sharper with our objectives and all of that. So I think the combination of these two and keeping relevance at the core may help us solve some of those issues.
I want to actually add to that. So I think our consumers today are very smart. They've always been smart, obviously, but today I think with product parity being omnipresent, right? And people know that between two products, there's going to be like maybe 5-10% of difference in what they're actually serving. So I think it's more, people started asking different questions, saying, what do you do for me beyond the availability of this product? What is there that you're able to solve for in my life and within the community? So I don't think today there is any brand that can escape this question that you have to be more than what you sell, right? And you have to find that area where, you have to contribute to culture in a big way, or you have to contribute to my life in a big way, right? And the best possible use case of technology is in this domain, right? Where you use tech to actually solve for very real world problems in our life, right? And I think the affinity that you will build as a result, right, will carry you for miles after that, right? Because I think today, we don't get to see every brands, the brands that we like to buy, we don't necessarily see every ad that they've ever made, right? But we've built that perception over time saying, hey, I know this guy over here has done wonderfully for a certain community of something that I really care about. And they may or may not have used tech in that manner. I think this is more important. So if you're able to use tech to solve for problems in our lives, I think that's the next point of evolution, and ad blockers may not even matter for that.
Yeah. So if I may just add quickly, completely agree on that, adding to the culture part, right? I think to me, doing this is not even like an option. I feel like that's the lifeboat we all need to take at this point. You take a Tata Jagore or a Coke Studio or any of these value exchange platforms, the affinity that we build through this, I don't think that's possible through the conventional mediums anymore.
Who better than this August, a lot of people in the audience who can help us with that, culture codes. We are talking culture codes and life truths, and I think they are the best guys out here who can help us with all of that. Moving on to Nithya. Nithya, Siddhant talked about products being just 5-10% here and there. You incubate. What are the new growth levers, both from a revenue and a profit standpoint at levers? How do you identify, there are so many signals that we get today to tell us where we can probably invest behind as an organization. How do you identify where to put your money behind? And then how do you understand through markers that this is good enough to now go mainstream? And an additional question to this, we can respond to that later, which is, have you ever trumped data by intuition and said, chuck it, this is what we'll go and do it?
I'll just add to the previous discussion because I wanted to say something there. So see, I think ad blockers and paywalls are a thing which we can't get out of. And I think just again, going back to basics on that, I think a lot of brands today, be it within HUL, be it outside, use word of mouth in the form of influencers. And I think that's becoming a strategy that a lot of digital first brands incorporate, being the only mode of communication. And I think even there, consumers are really smart, right? So they don't want to see something adsy with an influencer. They don't want to see something that's prescribed. They don't want to see an ad from an influencer. So I think another question that I'd like to ask Saugato after this is, what after influencers? So I think, because today, I think we're seeing
that question.
so much clutter, even in the influencer space, with consumers also picking up things 2 steps further than us. So what is the next mode of getting to the consumer? Is it gaming, for instance? Is it, or is it something else? Because there will be clutter which is very similar to what we're seeing in terms of ads, maybe in the erstwhile decade. But I'll answer the other question that you asked before that.
Which way?
Sure. See, incubating brands is not a science, unfortunately. But we have a few first principles. So we have something called the Agile Innovation Hub, which basically tells us spaces that are lucrative in terms of a demand space point of view and in terms of sizing. This takes in data from different sources, and it's an AI tool that basically helps us generate ideas and decide what to incubate. But of course, the job is not done there. That's just the starting step. And a lot of times we choose not to go into those spaces. I think the next step is, of course, consumer affinity, to test what the ideas that you have and test it in a nimble way. Because even after you test it and you figure that something is possibly going to work and something has good sizing, there are 20 Ps, like Chandan was mentioning, and things change over time. And I think it's important to also, with medium and short-term trends, lasting like 1 year, 2 years now, it's important to also launch fast and to have an ecosystem that enables you to get to market fast and to have an ecosystem that is able to be agile, to change something in the mix. So I think that's one part of it. The second is on intuition and data. See, I think data is, I'm sure, agree or disagree, it's still in a very suggestive phase. It's not as predictive as we would like it to be. And if we go by data, a lot of disruptions wouldn't have ever happened. Take, let's say, 10-minute deliveries, for instance, right? That's not something that data would necessarily help you arrive at. I think every single decision that one makes is a mix of both. And I think the fundamental reason for that is because consumers don't choose you because of rational reasons alone. There is a lot of system one thinking that goes into choosing a brand. You can never really tell with data because there are so many variables therefore. So I think while data gives you a direction, it's important to understand affinity. It's important to, therefore, if data is telling you the complete opposite of what your intuition is, it's important to understand why. For instance, your data may be telling you a certain campaign is not working or is working, but that audience is completely different from the audience you want to go to, right? That's, of course, the simplest example that there is. But there are a number of reasons why consumers choose you, from logical to emotional, which data doesn't necessarily always tell you. And I think the best way to go by that is consumer affinity testing. You have various testing tools today that can give you that. And even then, there is a fairly decent failure rate. And I think it's important to also understand that while it's not a science, it's important to try to have enough hits so that you figure out which one works. And that's how a lot of brands today are launching as well.
So Nithya, sorry, just building on the point that you mentioned, when you incubate and you launch something, right? Either you launch in one market or a couple of similar markets or in a channel, how do you measure success? And we were talking about success measurements and stuff like that. Of course, the CFOs love to hear all of that today, a lot more than they used to in the past. So how do you really become confident that when you scale this up, what markers generally, and you might just keep it a little vague for all of us, but how do you arrive at these markers to tell us, that let's scale it, and it's going to be, if it's been successful here, it's likely to be successful there as well?
If it's successful here, it's likely to be successful there is always under question, because we don't know if all variables remain the same. But see, markers depend on, I think, category also. Markers depend on the price point that you're launching at. But I think it's right in the sense that before you launch something, you need to have markers by which you can test in 3 months, 6 months, by whether you're scaling appropriately or whether you need to take calls that are that can change some part of the mix. I think a few broad markers. One is, of course, things like your acquisition. Is your acquisition cost scaling down, and is that something that you can afford? Is that something where you're actually scaling campaigns? Is your acquisition cost going down, going up? Is it profitable enough? Is your LTV to CAC ratio good enough and profitable? Is your repeat rate? Repeat rate is a marker of whether your consumers love your brand or not. Things like rating on Amazon and Nyka's of the world. Is that, are you getting a signal from that as to how your brand is and how your product is? So I think it's important to define some of these markers, and some of these markers are essential for newer brands. But of course, the metrics vary widely. For instance, a repeat rate of 15 could be good, a repeat rate of 30 could be good. It depends on your category, depends on how often you expect the consumer to buy you, and it depends on your extensions as well. For instance, if you have very similar extensions, consumers buying that is also a repeat rate. So I think, yeah, some of these markers are fundamental for newer brands that are launched, and the numbers, of course, vary.
Thank you so much. Saugato, you would like to respond to her question?
Yes, why?
Do
What
we have
after the
time?
influencers?
I'm just looking at this big clock.
It's okay, I think.
Okay, so I'll answer it at 3 different levels. The question is not what's next. The question is, I would like to reframe it as how much better and deeper can you go? Out of 303 million known influencers in the world, 15 million of them reside in India. So just to answer your question, 95% of them reside in vernacular regional parts of India. I think HUL is taking the first big step in going deep vernacular, and thank you for that. But even then, most brands are still obsessed with the top layer of 100, 500,000 influencers, and it's getting cluttered because of that. Again, it's the equivalent of CPM inflation. You go after the same inventory, you're going to land up with the same. The same influencer is now across 5 different categories. You've lost the plot. If you start to relook at this entire influencer as a many voices strategy rather than the singular brand voice strategy, and this many voices is just another form of media, you'll realize these many voices should then be planned for deep reach in your priority markets, priority audiences. So if Comfort wants to build in Tamil Nadu and in Kerala, then Comfort should be looking at building the right set of influencers in those parts, which irrespective of how small they are or big they are, they could be all of 10,000 followers, but they're credible because those 10,000 followers follow them for a reason, right? So going deep vernacular and exploiting this long tail, because India now is democratized on content creation. 3.5 billion reels are shared a day worldwide. Front and center in that is India, because India is the largest user market. So you can imagine what's the kind of action happening on creators in India. So going there. Going into the next is WhatsApp has opened. You can have your one-party, confidential, end-to-end encrypted relation with your consumer. 700 million Indians are on WhatsApp. You can choose which of that cohort is important for you. Go and talk to them there. That's next. If you step backwards, I'd say, and I love the way Karthik framed it. We have an engagement problem. We really do. We have done a global study of all short-form video, including shorts, TikTok, and Reels. We did a study, a quantitative study of 13 billion impressions in the US market, and it's very, 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 very telling. And it was an attention study with eye tracking. So the attention climbed till 6 to 8 seconds, started falling heavily downwards till 15, 20 seconds, stayed down all the way till 50, and started climbing till post 50 seconds. What does it tell you? Simple human behavior. Emily in Paris, they can watch back to back if they love it. You've got me at the 6-second mark, you've registered your impression, you've created a memory structure. If I'm not compelling enough, I'm going to switch out of you. If I'm compelling, if the content is compelling, I will watch you till the end, even if it's a 1-minute ad or a 2-minute ad. But that compelling case of ad will be very few and far between. The vast majority is about landing the message in the first 6 seconds. So to go back to your question, so what's next? The entire creative ecosystem has to reboot to this reality. We're still making for an era long gone, or rather going by. I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. Make for all forms now. 87% of Indians are watching TV along with their second screen. It's the primary screen now. When you're watching IPL, you're actually on your phone. Make for both. Don't make for one and don't adapt the one for the other. That would be my summary of what's next. But
so
it's
on that
right
note of small is big, whether it's 6 seconds or a small influencer of 10,000 people, we end this wonderful conversation that we're having today. Mithali is, I can't see Mithali. Mithali, do we have a time for question, or coffee break would have been better now? No. Okay, with that note, so when Mitali's word is the last word, thank you very much once again, and thank you for being such a great crowd.